Okay, my point was directly to your claim, which was as though it was the most viable option. It's the best thing that we have, all this stuff. That isn't true, because under your own admission, if there was a supernatural creator, which you contest, right? But if there was one under your own admission, it would be much more efficient at being able to do this and would create diversity of life much faster and more efficiently. Well, we know that there was a supernatural creator. There is literally no other way to.
Yeah, you can beg the question as much as you'd like with it, but doesn't change the fact that you're asking. You're asking me, what's a prediction, novel testable prediction that can be made under evolution? I give you one, and then you say, well, that's not exclusive to evolution, and that's fine. But you aren't actually affirming what evolution means at all, and you just seem to be ignoring that it would still occur under your model.
I'm not begging the question, okay? I presented a specific argument invoking evidence that...
A specific argument can be begging the question.
I didn't beg the question, though.
Yes, you did. You said, it can be no other way.
Oh, my. He just said he invoked evidence, dude. That's not begging the question.
I said, and I could say it, the first law of thermodynamics, if we're asking how the universe got here, right? I'm saying it's a supernatural creator. The first law of thermodynamics says matter and energy can't be created nor destroyed, so to not violate that would have to always be here, or it was not always here. Okay, so we go to the second law.
Materialistic, wait, let's stay on the first for a sec. That is completely in line with a natural, no God universe, right?
Correct. Yeah, if it was always here, you could say that as a material...
An eternal universe. Yep.
That's your only option. Right, because the alternative is that it wasn't always here, then it was created and put here. That would violate the first law. Okay, we go to the second law.
Wait, sorry. If the universe was created, then that violates the first law of thermodynamics.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so your view rejects the first law.
So excited. You're getting so excited. So funny.
Yeah, I got you.
You literally don't. The second law of thermodynamics says that entropy will increase, the amount of usable energy will decrease. So if the amount of usable energy in the universe is decreasing, it has to have a starting point to decrease from.
What's the argument for that?
Basic logic, it's decreasing.
Okay, what's the argument in basic logic?
I already said it. It's decreasing.
No, you haven't.
Yes, I did. It's
premise one. It's decreasing.
Dude, notice what you're doing. You interrupt every time. You can't help it. It's decreasing. If the amount of usable energy is decreasing, it has to have a starting point to decrease from. It cannot infinitely decrease, nor can you reverse it back to infinitely going to a point to decrease from. It can only
That's
decrease.
What I want the argument for.
Wait, do you understand that if something's decreasing, that it had to decrease from a point that was previously greater than that?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
But why does it have to? What's the argument that it has to have had a starting point?
Then where does it decrease from? If it doesn't start, you're saying it just goes infinitely, so there's no starting point to decrease from.
That's not the case. This is like a weird Grim Reaper fallacy or Grim Reaper thought experiment. Or can the guy make the shot if there's infinite officers behind him that have to give him permission?
I'll help you
there is no answer to those questions because there is no sound argument to say that it can or cannot happen. You have the burden of proof. You're making the claim that you require necessarily this starting point, and your argument for why you need a starting point is because you need a starting point, which is
that's so man. Good try, but that's not my argument. My argument was
okay. Go ahead with the argument for why you need a starting point.
Okay, and guess what, bro? In your own paradigm, this is acknowledged. I'll just cite Stephen Hawking and then make my point. This is what Stephen Hawking, the guy who adamantly spent his entire career trying to prove there was no God. You know that guy? Okay.
We don't really need that. Just the argument.
No, but I'm giving the argument. You've been incapable of following it so far. So I wanted to let you know that in your own atheistic materialistic paradigm, it's well acknowledged, and you'll catch up in a second. So the amount of usable energy decreases, the amount of entropy increases. So in order for that to take place, you have to have a beginning point akin to human progression. If you were to say that there is human progression, it had to have a beginning point to progress from. It cannot infinitely go backwards. It would be an infinite regression. So if I have the amount of usable energy decreasing, it couldn't infinitely decrease. It would eventually decrease to where there was no more of it. And if it's decreasing, that means there was a previous state that it had more. In order to decrease, you have to have a starting amount to decrease from. If you don't, then you would just go back infinitely. It would be an infinite regression. And it would, of course, be invoking something that doesn't exist, which is infinite. And that's not an amount.
There are many mathematical
you spoke
functions.
sorry, go ahead.
There are many mathematical functions that decrease, but they decrease slower and slower over time, so they will actually never reach zero. They will be infinitely reaching smaller values. Like
good thing we're talking about physical reality. Good thing we're talking about physical reality. Good thing we're talking about physical reality.
Entropy is mathematically described.
Good thing we're talking about physical reality. Infinite doesn't exist. We're talking about physical reality. So
You believe God exists.
doesn't exist.
Apparently, it's a limited God with a belief.
Every one of them have to interrupt. Yeah, you're not seeming to catch up, dude. Within the materialistic, naturalistic confinement that you believe in, you can't have eternality because that's not a real physical thing. It's not a real physical thing in physical reality.
Why is it not a real thing in reality?
Because provide evidence of infinity.
That's not how you do it, Whitsit. You can't do that. You made the claim that it can't exist in reality, so you have to back up your claim. And pointing to me and saying Rich doesn't know is an argument from ignorance. Because I don't know this thing, it must be this other thing.
That isn't my argument, though. Good thing that's not my argument.
I'm still waiting for it.
And every one of you lack impulse control. Isn't it interesting that all of the materialistic atheists lack impulse control? It's interesting. So the argument is that infinite is merely a conceptual abstraction. It isn't a real thing. It's just a mathematical abstraction. Nothing in physical reality is infinite. It is literally just a concept. If you're claiming that infinity truly exists in reality, you need to provide some type of evidence. So I just gave you a specific argument as to why infinity doesn't exist. It's merely a conceptual abstraction. It isn't an actual thing. If you're claiming it is an actual thing in real physical reality, you have to provide evidence of that. Everyone knows it's not a real thing, though. Not to mention, you don't even have to worry about any of this because if the amount of usable energy is decreasing, right, it has to have a starting point to even use the word decrease, okay? Because if you start to go backwards, right, so you start to go back in time as it was decreasing, you would have to go forever. There would be nothing to decrease from. If the amount of entropy is increasing, it has to have a certain amount to increase from. This is basic logic.
Well, I mean, you can just say it's basic logic and beg the question all you'd like, but unfortunately, all you've come to say is that defining an infinity as an abstract concept is in fact begging the question, because entailed within something being an abstract concept is that it doesn't necessarily exist in reality, right? So when you make the claim that you can never, it's not possible to have infinites within reality, the burden is on you to prove it. And saying you can't have infinites because you can't have infinites is a bad argument because it's begging the question.
You're not thinking of the default position, dude. The default position in your paradigm is that there is no such thing as infinity.
Thank you for telling me my position, sir. Is your position still that you like to choose?
If you're going to claim that infinity exists, you need to substantiate that.
I agree. I didn't say that infinites exist now, did I?
Stop interrupting me, dude. God, you're like 17 steps behind. You think you're 17 ahead, and you interrupt every point. It is laughable, bro. Okay, it's literally, by definition, infinity is by definition a word that we created. It is a concept. I'm not begging the question. I'm properly denoting what it is. It is by definition an abstraction. We use it in math, which is by definition abstract. It is merely a conceptual abstraction used for the convenience of particular mathematical use cases. You're claiming it's not only that, it's also a real thing that exists in physical reality, infinity. So therefore, if you're claiming infinity is a real physical thing in reality, you need to provide evidence that is true.
Do you think that I said infinity is a real thing that exists in reality?
You said it could be.
Yeah, that's two very different things now, isn't it, Whitsit?
No, you need to substantiate that it is a real
Those aren't the same thing?
You need to substantiate that
those are the same thing? What are you saying?
You need to substantiate that it is a real possibility.
Yes, there is no logical contradiction, i.e. P and not P, entailed within the universe being natural and eternal.
Rich,
okay, once again, the second law of thermodynamics shows that entropy will increase and the amount of usable energy will decrease. If something is decreasing, can it decrease forever? Yes or no?
Yes.
Really? So something can decrease forever? Just forever and ever and ever. It just decreases infinitely. Yep. Really? Explain that. Go ahead and coherently and logically explain that.
Absolutely. It would be my pleasure, Austin. So you are at point A, and there's a finish line at point B. The rules of this race are that you can only ever travel half the distance of you to the finish line. How long does it take you to get there?
That's irrelevant. You just invoked point B, refuting your own point. Yeah, you invoked point B.
The infinite, Austin, is that it's the amount of time, because you will never get to point B, because you can only go halfway each time.
You invoked point A, starting point, and point B in the race to even try to say your conception. And the fact
because the infinity is the amount of time.
I guess it's a good thing that reality doesn't work on some arbitrary rule of you can only go half the distance, because that is just some weird rule where at the point eventually you wouldn't even be moving, right? But you invoke the beginning and an end. You're basically claiming that there can be that there can be a beginning and not a beginning at the same time, right?
When would the race end? When would the race end? When would the race end?
In theory, it never would. In real life.
Oh, thank you. There's your infinite demonstration.
I didn't even say the spinach, you dumbass.
You said never. That's all I needed from you.
I did not say that. I said it would end whenever you can no longer move your feet because you can't even walk the distance that's half of that. So good, really stupid point in physical reality. Didn't work at all, but you invoked a beginning and an end to even use that stupid made up thing. Well, this is the point. See if you can answer this question. Do you need, is decrease a relative term?
Sure.
Okay. And so it's decreasing relative to what?
The previous state.
Okay. And so each step, let's go back each step. Each state, let's go back.
Backing up.
Each one of them are going to be described as decreasing. So each one of them are going to be
going backwards, it would be described as increasing.
Rich, stop interrupting so much.
No.
Rich,
You're wrong.
Stop and wait.
Like, yeah, if you were to say it was increasing from that perspective, that's not the point, though. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying
you're traveling backwards, right?
No, if we just were to rewind the clock and look at it again, it was still decreasing. Okay, my point is that each step along the way, you're saying that this is a process of decreasing. It's always relative to what came before it, a greater amount. Okay, you cannot decrease from blank amount. You have to have a starting amount to decrease from, and this is well acknowledged within your own paradigm. Okay?
Yeah, I didn't disagree with that.
So you need a starting point to decrease from.
That's what I disagree with.
Again, this is well acknowledged within your own paradigm. Okay, well acknowledged. This is why they. I promise. This is why they try to propose ideas such as like the crunch theory or whatever. And to quote Hawking here, right? He said, for a long time, people used to debate whether or not the universe was eternal, and this was done typically on ontological or philosophical or religious grounds. But that was before we got better cosmological observations. Recently, we now know, based on the second law of thermodynamics, that entropy will increase. He actually said that disorder will increase, and so that requires for there to have been a beginning. Similar to the argument about human progression, for the human progression to exist, it must have a starting point to progress from, or the term progression is irrelevant, is useless, is null.
You're smuggling that in, because as I demonstrated with my thought experiment, the amount of time it would take you to finish the race would be infinite, because you cannot finish the race if you are only permitted to travel half the distance each time. So because excuse me, can I not be interrupted? That fact that the amount of distance will be constantly decreasing while not reaching zero lends credence to something being eternal and never reaching zero.
No, it would not.
This is Zeno's. Real quick, it's Zeno's paradox, and that's Zeno's paradox, and Witsit pointed it out. You have a starting point in that. You have an A.
Right.
How can you say it's
but if the time is infinite, right? That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about the amount of time it takes to run the race.
It doesn't matter how much you take away from infinite; it won't change. How can that be? I don't know. Let's let Witsit go one-on-one with this guy, though, because otherwise it's too crazy. All right. My bad. Go ahead, Witsit.
Well, it's very simple. I already made, it is undeniable that for something to decrease, it has a beginning point. His analogy of a race is just stupid because, for one, he hadn't invoked a beginning and end to even invoke those relative terms. For two, to even be applicable in context, there would be some arbitrary dictator of the amount of energy. You're saying it's just going to keep on decreasing in halves. That's not how entropy works. You just violated the second law. It has nothing to do with that at all. There is nothing like that at all involved with the second law. Completely irrelevant. You thought it was some gotcha that you made up some irrelevant thought experiment. Nothing to do with the second law of thermodynamics, though. The second law of thermodynamics does not seek equilibrium relative to half the previous amount because we can't end. That isn't how it works. It's always going to be relative to the actual system itself, right? And furthermore, again, you had to invoke a beginning and end. Let's take your analogy, even though it's irrelevant in context, like I just pointed out. Let's take it and think about it. You're going to get to where you can't even walk anymore. You're just simply talking about a mathematical description. A mathematical description is just abstract. In theory, you can do mathematical tricks to make things go forever. In fact, we use infinity in math. But math is just an abstraction. It isn't real, concrete, physical reality. Do you understand that?
Your entire argument relies on a mathematical formula, which is the second law.
Hold on, man. Let's let Rich and we're letting Rich and Witsit have a one-on-one. I just said.
I'll pass the baton. That sounds like a very good point.
Well, and no, it doesn't. No, my whole argument isn't required for an equation. The second law of thermodynamics exists whether or not we mathematically describe it.
The same way as you could say the same thing about the infinity or any mathematical concept
prove
in matter of philosophy.
No, the difference is I can actually provide physical proof and evidence of the second law of thermodynamics, whether or not we mathematically describe it. I can just open up a soda. I can just put my coffee cup on the top of a counter and let it cool off. You cannot physically provide any type of real physical evidence of infinity, though. It is merely a mathematical abstraction.
I can, because again, you can divide any quantity, like distance, into an infinite number of smaller distances. And we have distances in reality, like you can divide a meter into an infinite number of, let's say, I don't know.
Zeno's paradox has nothing to do with this at all. Why do you guys keep bringing that up?
Because we have things in reality that are described by numbers, like distance, like time, and then you can divide this into an infinite number of smaller pieces of that value. So this is a demonstration that.
But you can't do that with matter, though. You can't do that with matter, though. You can't infinitely split the matter in half. Eventually, you run out of matter. Okay, even in your own paradigm within quantum, and that's why again you invoke distances, which are merely conceptual abstractions built into mathematical descriptions of reality that we use as people to describe physical reality. Sure, we use distances to describe what? Actual physical matter on the land, for example, in this case, it's actual physical matter that is the land, and you cannot infinitely divide that forever. Eventually, you would run out of matter. It would no longer be divisible in real actual reality. Your example literally elucidates my point, which is there is a distinction between physical reality and math.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. That if you want to only use what physically exists as the determining factor for your unit of distance, then you couldn't make it infinite because there are certain particles where that can't be divided anymore, like quarks, for instance.
Correct.
But yeah, I think that your argument could also be applied to your entropy, because entropy is also something that doesn't exist per se. It's also just a property of matter that we use a mathematical formula to describe, but this isn't the matter itself. It's a concept we use to describe how matter behaves over time.
Correct. But my point is I'm actually invoking the behavior of the system of matter and energy. That's the whole point. The behavior itself results in the amount of usable energy decreasing over time. And by the way, this is the most robust, thorough natural law that exists. Right? It's well acknowledged, again, within your own paradigms, that anything that goes against the second law is completely not viable, right? Because it is the most robust and tested law of the natural law that exists. So the amount of usable energy is decreasing in the universe, okay? So that's a major issue because we need a starting point. This is why I'm invoking Stephen Hawking. You guys know that Stephen Hawking is the one person that even got remotely close to, in theory, trying to help you guys escape the inescapable, that there is a God. He invoked the idea of imaginary time. He literally points out that he tries to point out some scenario where we could defy basically all physics and there'd be a different type of time or whatever, because he says it is inevitable that there was in fact a beginning. And we now know this based on how we understand the second law. Back in the day when people used to debate if the universe was eternal, they didn't understand that. This is a major problem though. I think you get it, which is why you went so hard trying to deny it, because if there was a starting point to decrease from, i.e. a beginning, if we go back to the first question where we're asking where the matter and energy came from, how did it get here? And the first law says matter and energy can't be created nor destroyed. So we say, okay, well then it's eternal. Now it can't be eternal. Use the second law. So the only option we have is that there was a beginning and it was created. And so if matter and energy was created, that violates the first law of thermodynamics, which means you have to invoke something that's attributed to a force that is not limited by the laws of nature, which is by definition supernatural. That's the definition of supernatural. Right? And of course, etymology being beyond nature. So we need something that's external to this universe, pre-existent, and it's supernatural. And it's going to then create the matter and energy. And then the question would be, well, what's the antecedent to creation? The answer is a creator. So you need an external, pre-existent, supernatural creator to explain the matter and energy, even from within a naturalistic framework, applying the first and second law of thermodynamics. That doesn't mean that it's a specific God. That doesn't mean that it has even sentience or intelligent agency, or that it's good, or that it's bad, or that it's from the Bible. Like, this argument doesn't discuss or touch on any of that. I'm saying, like, if you actually apply natural law, what you have to as a naturalist, that's the law that rules your ideology, your worldview. The first and second law dictate that you have an external supernatural creator. I brought that up, though, just to tell you that in the context of, like, well, evolution is the best thing that we got. It's really not, actually. A supernatural creator would create diversity of life with significant more efficiency.
Okay, let's just assume theism is indeed true, that this argument logically holds. I still think this is a terrible argument to then conclude from that creating something is most efficient and therefore it has to be created in its present form. Because again, from definition, any process that has to take energy, that has to take time and effort, it will be less efficient than just magically creating that in its present form without any...
Sure. Well, my argument wasn't that, brother. Yeah. My argument was not that since it's more efficient, it must have happened, bro. Like, that's not my argument. My argument was not that since it... No, it wasn't. My argument was not that since it would be more efficient, that must have been what happened. I only made that point to respond to his suggestion that this is the best that there is. It's nowhere close to the best that it is.
Because a best explanation doesn't mean the explanation that's the most efficient. In that case, you could make a case that any phenomenon we observe it just works by magic, and this is clearly not the case.
We can actually observe those phenomena, though, empirically test and verify them. Like you brought up the phone or whatever. Like, yeah, good thing we can empirically verify the production of technology. And that's not relevant at all.
The same way we can do with evolution. Evolution is not something that only happened in the past. It's a continuous process of change of allele frequencies over time in populations that we can just measure it. We can detect mutations.
You can't point to speciation at all.
Why?
Where's it at?
many cases, like ring species. This is a famous one.
There's not actual change of species.
Well, it literally is from definition. Definition of species is that two animals cannot reproduce and have viable offspring.
Okay, so there's no actual change of species, and the mainstream argument, of course, is that, oh, well, it takes too much time. And so, again, and even if, again, my point was in rebuttal to the idea that evolution is the best that we have. It's not, right? According to you guys, you kick the can, you just completely avoid the abiogenesis part of it, right? The inorganic matter. All right, bro. I don't know.
Your point is completely
Well,
new.
wasn't that the argument for years that you would never see evolution happen because it takes millions of years to happen?
No, I've never heard that argument. It's just
I've heard that over and over again, like Witsit just said.
It's just that if you take a smaller sample of time, then you will have smaller change because it's proportional to the time that passes.
There's no actual change of species observed. According to your own theory, we would take way longer than we've even been trying to look for it.
But we have a very good evidence for it based on like ring species that cannot be explained any other way than speciation.
Can't be explained any other way.
Exactly.
So just a baseless claim of exclusivity?
Yes, I mean, that's your standard of evidence. That's what you used in your previous argument. I have to point out a counterexample showing that infinity can exist in order to refute your argument that it cannot exist. So why are you now turning your standard of evidence and saying that just because you cannot demonstrate the contrary, that doesn't mean my argument is true? It's just a double standard of evidence.
There's no double standard. You guys put so much effort into disingenuously revising conversations. How about just being honest? Maybe put your energy in like something else. So that's not what happened. That's not what I said. My guy, you can't just baselessly assert that there's nothing else that's better. That's not how it works. If some type of creature or organism has information built in and mechanisms built into it by design to adapt to in its environment, that is significantly more efficient. You're using the word better or best, which is this just arbitrary denotation, right? That conveniently, puts that word attributed to your position. That's irrelevant. You have no actual evidence. And this is my point, dude. Like, do you agree? Here, see if you can answer the hypothetical preface. Do you agree that if there is a supernatural creator, then it would be much more efficient at the creation of the diversity of life seen on Earth?
Better, that isn't subjective at all. In the context of how scientific theory is better, it means that it can account for more phenomena. It can explain more of the phenomena we observe, and at the same time, it can also make more testable predictions that you can then test. But it can't. It can't though. It does. Theory of evolution. It does not. It explains everything we observe.
It can account for more. Give an example of something that evolution can account for, but a supernatural creator can't account for. Go.
Your God can do anything. That's crazy.
Yeah. So name one thing that evolution can account for that a supernatural creator can't account for.
Oh, now you're changing the story because you're just stating a supernatural.
That was what your argument was. That was your argument.
No. You're just stating a supernatural creator, which is extremely arbitrary. Is a completely separate thing from claiming a specific story that is described in the Bible. And this is what we're trying to discuss.
No one's talking about the Bible. I'm sorry that you're weirdly and oddly obsessed with it, but that's not what we're talking about. You just claimed that it's better and that the word better is not arbitrary when it comes to science because the theory can explain more and it can account for more and it can make more predictions. Wrong. Name one thing that your theory of evolution can account for that a creation or a creator couldn't.
Well, if you don't have a specific story about the creator and claims of what he did, which could derive predictions, then there's really nothing you could.
It would explain.
There's really nothing. Let me just finish. One sentence more. There's really nothing you could point out such a creator couldn't account for, but you could say this about any other theory, because this creator is, from definition, all-powerful, and therefore he could replicate any predictions of any scientific theory in some alternative way.
Okay, that's right. Let me ask you a question, though, man. Hey, if there just actually is a supernatural creator, then does your feelings about it or your frustrations that it can sufficiently be a more efficient or sufficient explanation for phenomena matter? Does your personal bias and feelings matter? Because I just presented an argument that didn't have anything to do with the Bible, didn't have anything to do with my feelings, didn't have anything to do with the bias. It's just using natural law. So I'm just actually acknowledging what is, and you're literally just trying to turn your head from it. So yeah, that's just the way it is. That's the way that this place is. It was created by some supernatural being or force, a supernatural creator. That's just how it is. So why would you then do mental gymnastics to try to explain things without one, when obviously a supernatural creator would be capable of answering all the questions you're trying to answer? Like it doesn't matter if it doesn't matter if you're frustrated that of course
right now what you're doing is right now what you're doing is an ad hominem attack. You're trying to claim I'm frustrated without any proof. I am, in order to undermine my arguments without actually addressing them. And I'm not
I addressed it specifically. Your point was but you could always say that. I said, okay, so who cares? It wasn't even an argument. My point is if it just is, if that's the truth based on actual evidence, then does any type of bias of yours or preference of yours matter? Does it actually change the facts? If there is a supernatural, maybe I'll boil down this. If there is a supernatural creator, do you agree that truth exists independent of whether or not any individual does acknowledge it or wants to acknowledge it?
Yes, but that's the problem. There's no evidence in the first place. There's absolutely no evidence for creationism.
I literally just laid out the evidence. The first and second law require it.
That's not creationism. Creationism is a specific claim that life was started in its current form 6,000 years ago. That's very, very different.
Wait, no, that's a Bible. Why do you keep bringing up the Bible? So what does the first law say? It says matter and energy cannot be what?
We already went over this argument, and I don't.
Exactly. But it says matter and energy cannot be. What's the word? Matter and energy cannot be what?
We already went over this.
Say the word.
And I demonstrated that even if you assume that theism is true, that this argument proving theism is true, it still doesn't follow that evolution is false.
Okay. I didn't say it was. Of course, a creator could make evolution, and I never claimed it false. That it's false. There's your third time trying to smuggle in a straw man. You're not answering it. I'll say it. So it's that matter and energy cannot be created. So no, I'm not just throwing the word creator around. It's literally what the first law is about. The creation of matter and energy. We end up finding out with the proper application of natural law to reality that you have to violate that first law to answer the question, how did the matter and energy get here, i.e. the universe, i.e. all physical existence? You have to invoke supernatural creator. Okay, so you're saying that that's not relevant in terms of diversity of life, etc. How is it not? Okay, you're right that supernatural creator could have chosen to create the process of evolution. Absolutely. I never claimed he couldn't. That would be a ridiculous argument. It's only atheists that make that stupid false dichotomy, right? Where they think that they can prove evolution, that somehow they've countered God, right? But they didn't, and it doesn't matter. It's not exclusive to whether or not there's a God. But I only brought the supernatural creator up, right? Once he claimed that this was the best option. I'm like, bro, that's not true. If the two options are evolution or supernatural creator, obviously the best, right? The best option that would most thoroughly explain what's observed and most efficiently attain what is observed is a supernatural creator. It's not even close. And a response of, yeah, duh, of course, because he's all powerful and supernatural, doesn't mean anything. That's the whole point. Yeah, duh, that's the whole point. So obviously we have that side has the ability to properly and more efficiently explain everything. I'm sorry if that hurt your feelings, bro.
What you're doing, you're projecting me. What you're doing right now is doing Mott and Bailey fallacy between just theism in general, which is saying that God created life, and a specific claim that life was created in its present form. When I'm trying to point out that there is absolutely no evidence for this specific claim of creationism, of these humans and all of the life forms just magically appearing out of nothing, then you're changing the story. But I've never said this is the only possibility. I'm just saying that a God exists, and then I'm accepting the God. And
I literally didn't ever say it. I literally didn't never say it.
Emma, I think everybody understands Witz's argument except you.
Just ask this guy.
Okay, so why is exactly the efficiency of creating something a reason why just magically creating it would actually be the case? If we observe many phenomena that would be much more efficient if they just work by magic, and yet they don't. Then why should I just do the same thing with evolution, do an opposite thing with evolution? If I observe all of the phenomena here and there's nothing supernatural about them, even if there's a creator, why would I have to assume that the default is that he just made it work by magic instead of following everything else I observe, magnetism, gravity, where I can describe it using natural laws, and say even if God exists, he probably made this using natural laws.
Can you explain how we came from monkeys? Can you explain that?
No, we're not even going there. We're not even trying to go there. The thing is, Embo, that's not even what Witz's arguing, dude.
That's literally his argument. His argument that if God exists, then it's most efficient to just create life as it is. And God exists because he's supposed to demonstrate it with that entropy argument.
He's not saying that God had to use magic as opposed to
I'm not saying that he had. I'm not saying that he had to. I'm saying that which it claims it's the most probable explanation. And I'm just saying that even if God exists, that's definitely not the most probable explanation, because all of basically everything we observe has natural explanation. So even if God exists, this isn't a problem for this God to use natural laws.
if matter and energy cannot be created, then doesn't there have to be something outside of our natural laws to create that energy? Like, isn't that just common sense, dude?
You're saying I don't understand with his argument.
Yeah, you don't.
I don't even argue for the existence of God. I am doing the opposite thing. I'm already assuming the existence of God for practical purposes, and I'm demonstrating how this doesn't debunk evolution. Because even
he's not trying to debunk evolution, dude. He's not trying to debunk evolution. He just said that.
That's where this argument started from. It was about evolution.
Dude, Witsit just told you he's not trying to debunk evolution. He's arguing for a creator.
That's literally where the argument started from. He only used the premise of God and then proving that premise by this argument because he wanted to debunk evolution, and then he made the argument that it would be the most efficient. Like proving God was only the component of that argument because he had to prove God in order to make it work.
He's trying to debunk atheism, and generally most people would call it evolution.
Who calls atheism evolution? Name one person who does.
Dude, ask Witsit what his entire argument has been.
Even if I do that,
like ask anyone in the room.
Okay, so everyone in the room, what was Witsit's argument originally?
What I heard was that he was countering the idea about efficiency. It was about the efficiency. What's the most efficient thing? And all he said is that a supernatural creator would be more efficient than what you guys are invoking.
No, he said that if a creator existed and he demonstrated that he existed, then it would be the most efficient for him, like he already assumed he existed, it would be the most efficient for him to create life in its present form than by doing it by evolution. And then I demonstrated
that was literally one of his side points, dude. That was one of his side points. I'm talking about what he's been arguing, his main point in this entire argument. It's that matter and energy cannot create itself. It cannot be created, so it has to have something that is outside of our laws of nature to create it. That's his entire point.
No, that actually was a side point after the discussion diverged from the topic of evolution.
Oh, I don't think you're correct, but whatever.
Do you think it's accurate to characterize whatever happened before the Big Bang as supernatural? I think it is.
Well, I mean, it has to be supernatural.
Yeah.
Whatever paradigm.
But everybody who utilizes the laws of thermodynamics, including the people that purported them, don't suggest for a second they describe the universe before the natural world, do they? They just describe the natural world with our universe.
Well, yeah, sure. How is that even relevant?
So you can't really use them as a defense as to what happened before the Big Bang, can you really?
Can't use natural laws?
In that paradigm.
Natural laws?
Sure. You can't. If it's a supernatural realm before the Big Bang, let's suppose what they're saying is true, and there's a supernatural realm before the Big Bang, whether it's deistic or there's some other mechanism we don't understand, which is supernatural. We don't understand what it is yet. There's no point using natural laws created within the framework of our natural universe to try and anneal or comport or confine some notion of the supernatural realm before, whatever it is.
Well, the thing is, it's not that there's no need to invoke natural laws. It's that you can't invoke natural laws. You have to have something other than natural laws.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you don't need to invoke. The second law of thermodynamics is that the energy and matter can't be created. Well, you can't use that talking about prior to the universe because does that apply to God? Could God create energy and matter?
Yeah.
So you need something. You need something that's supernatural, then, based on the laws of nature that we know. You need something supernatural.
You do. Whatever happened
before the universe that created all the matter and energy. Oh, that's what's up.
Whatever came before the Big Bang must, by definition, be supernatural.
What was this whole
and creator?
What? There's a creative mechanism, but you don't know what that is, and you can't possibly ever discern what that is, can you?
There's no way to know what
the
happened
antecedent
before.
of creation.
There's no way to know what happened before creation.
What's the antecedent of creation?
A creative mechanism.
No.
Well, yes.
No.
You can posit that there's a creator.
Yes.
You have no evidence. You have no evidence that there's a creator because you have no idea what happened before creation.
The creative mechanism has to be used, right? Okay. So the antecedent to creation is a creator. So supernatural creator. If you guys want to do mental gymnastics about how that somehow isn't a supernatural creator or whatever, or you want to claim that it's natural process even though it's antithetical to a natural process.
I do.
Whatever. Yeah, but it's not natural by definition, though.
Well, the second you invoke supernatural, you are no longer in natural science, so you can go ahead and make up whatever rules you want.
But natural science dictates that we do that.
You realize that's exactly what NASA is doing?
The second you invoke supernatural, You're no longer in the realms of natural science, so go ahead and say whatever you want.
Now, what's the definition?
What's the definition to show with it that supernatural is that is not natural. Above supernatural.
What's the definition of supernatural?
Supernatural, not natural.
Okay, it's beyond nature, right? It's attributed to a force that's not limited by the laws of nature. Okay, do you agree that if something creates matter and energy, that it would be supernatural?
No, don't agree with that at all.
But it would violate the first law of thermodynamics, though.
Yeah, you're misusing the laws of thermodynamics, but that's okay.
I would advocate it would be supernatural. The mechanism that generated whatever came before the Big Bang must by definition be supernatural.
Exactly, because it violates the first law of thermodynamics, NASA.
It doesn't violate.
NASA, can I have 5 minutes? Yeah. It doesn't.
It doesn't violate because it came before it.
No. Those laws are framed, and their only utilization is in the natural world. No one suggests they give you any. No one suggests they give you any framework or tenet that comports to anything before the Big Bang, do they?
Okay, that's not the point. My point is that it's not limited by. It's beyond. Right. It's beyond the laws of nature. So when I say violate, I'm saying if you seem to forget that the question I asked him was, can matter and energy be created? Right? Or I asked him, do you agree that matter and energy cannot be created? So I wasn't even asking specific to before the universe. I'm just saying that if something creates matter and energy, that would violate the natural law that says specifically matter and energy cannot be created. Okay.
You're misusing the laws of thermodynamics. They're not meant to be used in the ways you're using.
Wow.
No. Wow. Okay. Well, the first law of thermodynamics says that matter and energy cannot be created or destroyed. Correct?
That's correct. That's involved for chemistry and that sort of stuff. Not creation. Sorry.
Nope. It's involved for all of the matter and energy in the natural world.
You know nothing of this. You know nothing of this.
I'm eating.
You know nothing of the second law of thermodynamics.
All right. You seem to be kind of like in that typical mode of bad faith, bro.
Someone who studied the laws of thermodynamics, yeah.
Kind of like you understand that it doesn't only apply to chemistry.
Actually, it does, but that's okay.
It only applies to chemistry.
It was one of the main parts of it, yeah. That's what you said in every chemistry book.
So does it apply to all? Does it apply to all matter and energy?
In the meantime, anytime you invoke the supernatural, you are no longer in natural science, so you can make up any rules you want because you're now in the realm of
literally. The point is that we cannot explain how the matter and energy got here without stepping outside of natural science or natural laws. Right? That's kind of the whole point. Is that you need something that's not limited by those laws. It's really inescapable.
It does not posit a Christian God.
I didn't say anything about a Christian God, man. I just said that.
You're talking about a creator. You're talking about a creator. You're talking about a creator here. You're not talking
about the Christian creator.
Yeah, well, according to Whitsitt, I know his background.
How does a creator necessitate a God that is Christ?
I know Whitsitt's background. I know where he's coming from.
Dude, he's not even a Christian.
I'm not invoking that.
Like,
you are though.
So dumb, dude.
You're invoking a creator. You're invoking a God.
How does that have anything to do with the Christian
Bible? Not the
Oh, so you're not invoking the creator in the Bible.
Yeah, he's not creator of the Bible. Oh my, dude! He literally said
a creator. You're saying that the creator is not the creator, or the God of the Bible is not the creator that you're talking about. You're talking about a different creator.
That's literally what he said, dude. That's what Whitsitt said.
You're lying.
This argument isn't about that, right? Like this argument doesn't prove anything about the characteristics of the creator or anything like that. Like it's literally not even relevant to this argument.
Did NASA Shill just come in out of context and just start like?
No, NASA Shill knows it.
Yeah, this argument.
NASA Shill's been listening.
Hold on, guys.
NASA Shill's been listening for about the last half hour and knows what you guys are talking about.
Okay, but Paid, I've used this argument before, and I don't even believe in the God of the Bible. And I've used the same exact argument because it just has a blanket statement of creator. It doesn't, like Whitsitt said, you don't assign any tributes or anything. So nothing to do with the Bible.
He explicitly laid that out in his argument.
Yeah,
it's an antecedent relationship is all it is, an antecedent relationship. In order for there to be a creation, there has to be a creator.
You automatically describe some sort of person with their essay.
NASA Shill, he literally said that, and if you were actually paying attention, you would have heard that a long time ago. So dumb.
No God of the Bible, no angels, no nothing.
Like I said before,
relationship.
Like I said before, once you start invoking the supernatural, you can think whatever you want because you're outside the rules of natural science. You're into math.
Just ignore what I said.
I see what's going on here. We caught you guys with nothing to give for evolution, so you want to talk about God again. It's fine.
No, they specifically want to talk about the God of the Bible, not just the creator of everything.
Oh, so you're saying that the creator of everything isn't the God of the Bible now?
That's not what he's saying.
That is not what I said.
He's saying it doesn't have to be.
Well, it doesn't have to be, but it probably is, right? Because, I mean, that's...
that's not even our point, dude. You believe there's no God? We're contesting that, dude.
The point is, once you get outside the range of natural science, which the second law is about, the first law, you're outside the laws of natural science. You can just make up whatever you want.
Repeat your script, dude. Repeat it.
It's not my script. It's not my script.
The first and second laws dictate, the first and second laws bring you to a creator.
Not necessarily. To you, they do. But again, once you invoke supernatural, which is what you're doing, the rules are off. The first law no longer applies once you invoke a supernatural. The second law of thermodynamics, no longer applies once you invoke the supernatural.
Exactly, dude.
How are you making Witz's point without realizing it? This is just ridiculous.
No, it's not making Witz's point. I'm making, you can't use the second law. You can't use the first and second law to say there's a God.
Which is, no, he didn't use them to say there's a God. He said there's a God because they wasn't using them.
What? Mm-hmm. Then why is he been? No,
you're not
using the first and second law, but you're using the first and second law.
No, he's not using them. He specifically said God is outside of those laws. He's beyond them.
Okay, so now you're in supernatural.
If we did use them, dude, we couldn't get anything. We wouldn't have anything, dude, if we did stick to those laws. So he's saying we have to have something outside of those laws, dude.
Well, maybe you're misunderstanding the laws.
Oh, wow. Wow. Oh, we just don't understand it, guys. We just don't understand that. He just has to invoke that. We don't understand it because he knows he's losing.
No, I'm not losing. I'm just saying that you're invoking the supernatural, so make up whatever magic you want.
We're not invoking it. You need it.
Yes, you are. You're invoking the supernatural. I am not. You are invoking
we're saying logically you have nothing else to offer.
There you go. You're invoking the supernatural.
Whatever, dude.